Hello everyone, welcome to Middle Fantasy. I am your host Zach, and what can I say? I love the Kingkiller Chronicles. It is my favorite book series of all time, and the world is vast and mysterious, and being in this community is fun because it becomes a wild goose chase because we still don't have the third book. So when we do in our spare time, besides doing our 19th and 20th reread, I think I'm at 45? I don't know, I've lost track. But when it comes to our rereads, we love to dissect everything because Patrick Rothfuss does this unique thing of pretty much leaving mysteries and clues within every sentence. One meaning could mean 40, and one thing you might think that is mundane turns out to be the most significant thing ever. And because of this, the community has kind of spread apart when it comes to theories and speculations. Who's this God King, or is this character secretly this person's brother's nephew, cousin's, sister's roommates? Yes, that type of stuff. And for me, I love theories, especially when it comes to the Kingkiller Chronicles, because it's a giant mystery and I love mysteries. Now today we're going to be doing something very fun and very special, and that is we're going to be talking about some of my favorite tinfoil hat theories that go from the plausible to the widely implausible, and I am so excited to talk about this. Now when it comes to this, I'm going to be giving very broad strokes into these theories that I personally love. I'm going to be doing more in-depth videos later on talking about them, as well as some of these are kind of based off of other people's theories, and two of them I'll bring up are actually videos that I watched, and I'll have links to those down below by captured in words. So check him out, he's an amazing guy and he does amazing Kingkiller content. Why don't we begin? But first, if I'm going to do this, I gotta do this correctly. I gotta keep the Chandrian thoughts out. Yeah, this is what this is for. This is so I don't say the wrong things, and if I think of any wrong songs, you know, this is what's going to help with the tinfoil hat theories. So let us get into it, because this is the fun part, is speculating and really keeping all the impure Chandrian thoughts out. Oh no, if I keep saying them, are they gonna pop out? Why don't we get into it? Number 5, Master Lauren is an Emir. I love this theory. I actually really subscribe to it, that he's a part of the secret society that is, banded together to help destroy the Chandrian in one way, shape, or form, and that the Master Archivist of the university is working for the secret society, and who better to do it than the person that carries the knowledge that could be dangerous to the whole world when it comes to the Chandrian. I love this theory because it is very plausible, especially when it comes to kind of the nefarious nature of the Emir and kind of what they're trying to do, especially when it comes to all the clues that are set up, such as the first couple times that Quoth goes into the university library, he's looking for very, specific things by the Emir and the Chandrian. Master Lauren personally goes up to him and tells him how wrong he is and kind of scribbles his name out. And he's also very adamant that when Quoth tries to burn down the archive, that he basically bans him for a very, very long time. And yes, there's one part of it is, he almost burned down an entire, whole civilization of knowledge like the Library of Alexandria, which I'm still bitter about. But when it comes down to this, it makes sense, especially when it comes to all the knowledge. And why is it that Quoth gets punished, whereas there's another student, Puppet, that lives there who has candles? And this is something like I've always felt like they work together in one ways, where pretty much we're looking for the signs of the candles when there's blue flame. The Chandrian are near into the university. And I kind of like this theory because, again, when it comes to the idea of knowledge and the pursuit of knowledge, some knowledges are dangerous, and sometimes the best thing to do is to keep those locked away. Though I've always been in the weird thing of, I feel like there's going to be, when it comes to Master Lore, and I feel like all the Master Archivists have always been Emir, and that they kind of talk about how there's not really an order to how the pretty much library does all their organization, but I've always felt like it's going to be something where it's going to be in a cookbook, or it's going to be in the weirdest place possible for a Dewey Decimal System, that the archive is organized in a certain way where pretty much if you have the right cipher to it, you can break it and it will make complete sense. And I feel like that might be the case, but for me, I love this theory, and for me it holds a lot of weight. and I just think it's a lot of fun. Number 4, the Chandrian aren't the villains of the story. I love this theory because for me, I've always considered the Chandrian being more like a hurricane or an earthquake, more of a force in nature rather than a mystical villainous entity. Yes, they do horrific and awful things, but much like a hurricane or a wildfire, sometimes there are collateral damage in the way, where yes, they do horrific things, but all of it is for a purpose, keeping, people from remembering their stuff. I always subscribe to the theory that the reason why they're killing all these people and doing the things that they're doing is not because they're villainous, but because it's the theory that once you forget something completely, they'll just disappear and they'll allow Haliax and all the rest of them to just straight up just die and fade away into existence. It's one of those things, it's like, you're not really forgotten until the last person that remembers you dies and you're completely forgotten and you don't exist anymore. It's kind of that type of thing. It's like out of sight, out of mind, but because Quoth and his parents and a lot of other people keep finding stuff about the Chandrian, the concept of them not dying doesn't quite go away, so they hunt in pursuit and do that a lot of things because their end goal is to just straight up just die and just fade out into existence, so that's the way to break the curse. And I find that to be one of my favorite theories about this, and kind of how, in the end, all the signs and all the things that point to them is very misleading because we're getting it from one point of view, then the other, when the series is basically based off of we're watching it from a biased point of view with Quoth, rather than seeing it from multiple perspectives. We're seeing it him telling the story rather than them telling the story. And for me, I love this theory. Number 3, Auri is a princess. The first time that I heard this theory is actually from Captured in Words, and this is one that's always stuck with me because it makes so much sense that Princess Ariel is actually Auri in many ways. And even when it comes to the whole thing with Elladan, looking at Quoth, like how did you even come up with that name? Is that she's a cracked princess that kind of found her own kingdom in the Underthing? And I won't really go into much of the detail. There's an amazing video, there's going to be a link down below about this. But I've always found that there's always something special about her. I mean, we do have that very beautiful novella that we get into her head and we figure out what really makes her tick. And this is something that I've always found to be one of my favorite characters, is because of how mysterious but yet free-spirited she is, and having it in a way where, she is a person of power in many ways, but she loves being where she is one of those things that I absolutely love, especially when it comes to Auri, who's actually based off a real-life person named Tunnel Bob, and kind of how there's that free spirit nature to her, as well as when it comes to Tunnel Bob. There's actually an amazing story of how he tells how he came up with Auri by Patrick Rothfuss. I'll have a video for that also down below. But just how, like, sometimes people want to do one thing whereas society says you can't do that, but it's kind of that free spirit nature, and having her as almost a princess and kind of in her own little castle in many ways is kind of the things that I absolutely love about this theory, is that, it kind of goes against her nature in many ways of having power and authority when she's such a free-spirited character, and I love that theory so, so much. Number 4, Quoth is a Lackless. I think this is probably one of the worst held secrets ever. I think everyone's kind of pieced this one together a little bit, that Quoth is the member of the Lackless family. And there's a lot of things that go into this, especially, there's a lot of merit, I'll say, to this, because when it comes to Quoth's mom, she gets really upset when Quoth does the rhyme, and she's like, well, Lady Lackless is a real person. She would know because she's my sister in many ways. And when he actually meets Lady Lackless and how much she hates him just for being an Edamaru because her sister kind of got spirited away, and you put 2 and 2 together, it's like the most obvious. Though what I love about this theory is that even if it is true, who cares? Because we know where the story ends. He's never going to become a huge, powerful lord or someone that's gonna be rich and famous. He's just Coat. And I kind of love the merit of this, because when it comes down to it, I kind of love that Quoth has a terrible aunt that hates him for just being bored in many ways, and I find that to be fun because it adds more to the whole thing with the Lackless estate and the box with no locks and many of those things where, it adds more to the story, but also it isn't going to change the narrative because we know what's going to happen to Coat, where he is in the narrative at the end, sort of, when it comes to the present day. Though I love this theory, there are many different interpretations of it and what does it mean within the larger narrative, but in the end of the day, it's one of those questions that, has some merit, and does have a lot of backing to it, and it's one of my favorite little tin hat theories. And number 5, Quoth is lying about most of his story. Now this is one that I love. I think this is my favorite tin hat foil theory about this, is because when it comes down to Quoth, you know, he's a bard, he's a storyteller at heart. He even, you know, straight up says that a lot of the things that he tells is straight up lies, and the best ones that he tells are his own. And I think for me, this has a lot more merit than a lot of the other stuff. I feel like when it comes down to, you know, this narrative is that it's a story about telling stories, and what is the best way to keep a story alive but then embellishing it in many ways? Yes, we learn about the truths of certain things, such as when those muggers are attacking him and he makes like a, you know, an impromptu flashbang, or, you know, accidentally burning down the town of Trebon. Like we see those things, but there's a lot of things that you see within this narrative, such as, you know, he remembers a lot of like minute things that people would probably brush over in stories, like how much money he has, what he was doing and eating this particular day. Like I feel like those are like filling in the blanks a lot, whereas when it comes down to it, he's kind of embellishing the story the same way as a good bard. Oh, he was fighting 3 guys, when in the real narrative it might have been 1 guy who's slightly drunk or hungover. But that's the thing that I love about it, is that I feel like he's embellishing the story to keep it more lively rather than, you know, telling the real story. I feel like a lot of the stuff that he did was probably either didn't happen that way, or maybe he even, this is going to be a shock for everyone, he's taking credit for other people's things, whereas when it comes to the narrative, you know, you have really not really reason to believe that he is telling the truth for a lot of the stuff, because again, a bard's job is to make stories interesting. The most interesting stories in the world are the ones that we tell that are like more fantastical than they really are, especially when it comes to certain songs like Ring Around the Rosie. That song's about the Black Death, but yet the song's so catchy and memorable that it's kind of endured. Yes, it's kind of lost its context unless you know about it. I guess that's like a BuzzFeed thing of like, did you know this about this song? The dark meaning of this song. Those songs last and go on because they're catchy and memorable, and yet they have hints of truths in them. Same as how I don't think Quoth is completely lying, because I think there's truths within his narrative, and by the end of this story, we're going to see a lot of it maybe come true, or we'll see what is right and what is wrong. I think the biggest hint about this is actually the courtroom scene, where he kind of skips over it, not because he thinks it's boring, but because he's claimed at the beginning of the story that he has near perfect memory, and that he can remember a lot of things. And when it comes to court stuff, I'm not sure how the legal system at Temerant is, but when they have people writing that down with like meticulous notes, because he even says, you know, you can go back and read the whole thing. If he gets one thing wrong and like he accidentally slips up, and then Chronicler goes and actually reads the transcript and sees that, wait a second, there's some discrepancies in what he's telling here, because it's actually one of the rare things that gets written down about him. It's like, wait a second, maybe he doesn't have near perfect memory. And that's kind of the thing, is like there's a lot of things that he kind of skips over and brushes upon, because he does shorthand in some things, and then he does longhand in a lot of the narrative. And for me, I find that to have a lot of weight. It's always been really interesting to me. And personally for me, it's one of my favorite theories of all time. And really, in the end of the day, it's all about the mystery. When we get Doors of Stone, I'm interested to see which ones are right and which ones are wrong, or even when it comes to the tinfoil hat stuff, what is the best part and what is the worst part? Well everyone, thank you all so much for watching this video. It was fun going down memory lane and talking about some of my favorite theories for one of my favorite book series. What about for you all? What are your favorite theories? What are your favorite tinfoil hat theories? I'd love to hear them down below. Maybe we can solve a mystery together in many ways. I think for me, that's kind of the fun nature of the Kingkiller Chronicles, is that theories pile up and pile up and pile up, and by the end, some of them might be right, while some of them might be wrong, and in the end of the day, that's what I really, really love about the whole narrative. Well everyone, thank you all so much. If you love this video, please consider subscribing down below, liking this video, sharing it in any way. I would really love that. Well everyone, like always, may your food and drink ever be tasteful, may your books be filled with fantasy and adventure. Bye everyone, see ya!